A.J. Schenkman, and that is A.J. and Schenkman, S-C-H-E-N-K-M-A-N. I'm a teacher of history. I'm the author of Washington's Headquarters, Home to a Revolution, and also Wicked Ulster, Tales of Gangs, Desperados, and More, and Murder and Mayhem in Ulster County, which is kind of a continuation of Wicked Ulster, just it has murder. And also a history of the Wallkill Central School District, in addition to being a historical consultant here, or consulting historian, it depends on the day. My aunt had just purchased a house from around the 1850s, and that house was just outside of New Paltz on Route 32. And I had some kind of an attachment to this house. And I instantly started researching, like here, there are these wide floorboards, and it was built by Johannes Jansen Freer. And I think it really began when I started to find out about this guy, Johannes Jansen Freer. And I began to get little pieces of information of where he died, and where his wife died, and the birthing room where children were born, and unfortunately some of them also passed away. And so as I began researching Johannes Jansen Freer, I needed a little bit more. So once I exhausted some of the books and some of the information that I found, a professor, Dr. Lawrence Hauptman, said, you should go to the Haviland Heidgert Library. He suggested I meet Irene Martin. I met her, a lovely woman who now lives in Virginia. She ran the archives there. And it turns out that one of the people, I guess it would probably be the grandchild of Johannes Jansen Freer, was still alive. So Irene Martin went and got some pictures and talked to her. But it still wasn't enough. I wanted to know more about the family. So she suggested that I meet a fellow by the name of Ken Hasbrook Sr. Ken Hasbrook Sr., all of these buildings that are around today, he's responsible for them. He had that foresight that, we need to save these houses before they're destroyed. Before I left, Irene Martin said to me, the Hugo Freer house is still around. And I said, well, what does that have to do with Johannes Jansen Freer? She goes, well, he's a Freer. He's a great-great-grandson of the patentee. And of course, the question is, what's a patentee? So it just kept getting me deeper and deeper and deeper. And then I found the New Paltz patent and realized that the land that my aunt's house was on was part of the patent and belonged to Hugo Freer, and then it was passed on from family generation. So I come down to the street, and I was just blown away by it. So I, love the cemeteries and, and all the old headstones and all the old houses that were here. And, then I went down to the Hugo Freer house. And by that time, it was time to go meet Ken Hasbrook. And I was really, really nervous because this is Ken Hasbrook. And he'd been built up in my mind, how important he is. And, in this house, this guy founded this whole street, the whole thing. So I walk in, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's asking me what I want to know about. And I said, well, it's box, blah, 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 on Route 32 South. And he said, does this house look like this? And I said, yeah. And he started explaining it. And he goes, I grew up in that house. And I said, and he goes, no. He goes, I know what you're going to say. I didn't grow up in that house. He goes, but I kind of did. Dottie Fowler was like my sister, and she taught me how to drive. And she used to give me turkey eggs to incubate, and then I'd have my own turkeys. And he goes, I spent so much time in that house. I know every inch of that house. And it was weird because Ken, Mr. Hasbrook, was almost like a stoic figure. You know what I mean? He's that older generation. That's how I, felt about him. And you watched him just transform into like this kid living in this house, visiting this house. And he said, you know what? He says, I don't have any of the real materials that I need, and I know who Anne Hardenberg was. I've researched the house and all. He goes, why don't you come back in another week? And when I did, he had a picture of Anne Hardenberg, Johannes Jansen Freer's wife. So that started the whole thing with Huguenot Street. And every time I kind of was, I don't want to say lonely, depressed, or anything like that, I needed to clear my head. I'd walk down the street and just kind of imagine history taking place. Or I would just sit at a bench and just kind of you know, just think. It was just so quiet. In 1994, I started working at Washington's headquarters state historic site, Hasbrook House. And one day I'm doing a tour, and this woman keeps raising her hand like one of my students would do. So finally I have to call on her, and she keeps asking me, what about Jonathan Hasbrook? And I gave her the standard spiel of who Jonathan Hasbrook was. And she says, but I want to know more because this was their house. And she went on and on. And later on, I started talking to her outside, and she was a Hasbrook descendant. So not too long after, I get a phone call from Huguenot Street. You know, we've heard that you know a lot about Jonathan Hasbrook by this point, and we know that you work at the Hasbrook House. How would you like to come up here and work for us? And I said, well, we'll give you your own apartment, rent-free. I'm there. I began, I started writing on Jonathan Hasbrook, and I started lecturing on Jonathan Hasbrook. And many, many years pass, and then I meet someone named Marietta Schneider, and she said, how would you like to come and work for us? And I'm like, this is deja vu. And she said, as a consulting historian. And I said, yeah, I'd like that very much. And that's where I am today. And now that I know even more history about it, it even makes it that much more amazing. Knowing the trials and tribulations that went on in these houses, the lives that existed. And as you're walking down the street, if you know the history, it comes alive. I mean, you see all the stuff that's going on. And if I remember it right, if the flags were out, the alarms were off. If flags were in, the alarms were on. I remember putting the flag in the Dale house, which meant the alarm was on. And I came back there after I did my rounds to double back, and the flag was out. But the alarm was on. I couldn't explain that. Why don't you go turn the alarm off, or why don't you walk through the house and tell us if there's anybody in there? And I'm like, no. So why don't you two come with me? So we all three went through the house, and we're going up the servants' entrance up the back, and there was a woman standing at the top of those steps. She was kind of just above the step a little bit, at the very top, and she was wearing like a white dress, and it was definitely, to me, Gertrude's face in a way, but it was kind of like, it was blurry. If you looked at it, it was kind of like looking through one of these glasses. It's kind of was a little blurry, but when I knew Gertrude's portrait, because when I would do tours, when I was in the presence of that picture, it made me very uneasy, as it does today. I flew back into Brian's arms. Tim was waiting downstairs. I said to Brian, did you see that? Did you see that? He goes, yeah, I saw it. I saw it, man. He goes, yes, I saw it. Let's go. Let's get out of here. And we just told Tim everything was fine. We took the flag, put it inside, locked it, and that was the end of it. And that was probably one of the more interesting stories. And then to find out she died of tuberculosis, I think it was. But I'm pretty sure to my dying day, I'm going to tell you that was Gertrude. And there's lots of stories like that circulating around. I think they tell them on Haunted Huguenot Street. That's a plug, Haunted Huguenot Street, in October. Okay? I'll be there. This year I will be there. And Jonah will be dressed as a goblin. Sorry. Good. When I first met Ringo, sorry.